Statement, Sri Lanka. You have the floor, please.
Ambassador Mohan, may I thank you for your stewardship and efforts in leading this open-ended working group and congratulate you on effectively driving it forward to the third substantive session. We were happy to see this morning the High Representative for Disarmament, Madam Nakamitsu. The draft's annual progress report, Mr. Chairman, I must say, is comprehensive and leaves us much for discussion on 7 important aspects. Sri Lanka wishes to bring to focus the following aspects for the purposes of this discourse. Your proposal, Mr. Chair, that we file an annual progress report is most appropriate and timely. There is much support for such an initiative. The draft more than cements the phenomena that cybersecurity is global, that it needs to be dealt with through global collaborative efforts. It seeks to identify gaps that needs further attention. It reminds us that there is a need to harness collaborative efforts to consider diverse views to achieve a balanced outcome and build a consensus. Such collaborative efforts will no doubt, Mr. Chairman, address the context-specific challenges and bridge national and global policies in establishing norms and best practices in regulating the environment in the use of information and communication technology. Mr. Chair, the draft looks at the prevalent context-specific threats, need for norms and applicability of international law, critical analysis of law, and encourages the implementation of a multidisciplinary approach. Such multidimensional approaches will not only facilitate, I say, in threat detection, but can give productive pointers to security risk management and impact assessment when norms, principles, and laws are implemented. Sri Lanka believes that collaboration can bring in global efforts closer and hence must focus on taking stakeholders such as industry bodies on board to work in parallel with governments and promote ICT security and continuous innovation in cybersecurity. It is pertinent, I say, Mr. Chairman, that I briefly refer to cyber-specific international legal regimes that deal with the prevention of harm across economic sectors. Artificial intelligence-based processing or personal data, and secondly, as a target and tool for crime, which I think that needs focus. Artificial intelligence systems, like other information as we know, can be a target of tool for criminal activity. As observed before, both of which are within the scope of the 2001 Budapest Convention on Cybercrime. Also dealt with within the Council of Europe framework with active participation of non-member states from the outside. Now, whilst universal ratification may be possible for political reasons, one of the principal objectives of the treaty is to harmonize domestic, substantive, and procedural criminal law as a precondition for more effective international cooperation. And I say that's important. Being the first and most widely ratified multilateral treaty on cybercrime, this treaty can achieve its objectives, we believe, without formal global participation, as it simply serves as a model instrument. At just over 2 decades, Mr. Chair, at just over 2 decades old, the international law of cybersecurity remains in a relative state of infancy, I would say. This is despite the fact that the period has been seen extraordinary advances in cyber capabilities, the exponential growth of societal cyber dependence, and a corresponding rise in vulnerabilities to hostile cyber operations. Indeed, states continue to struggle with such basic issues as sovereignty in cyberspace, as quite rightly pointed out in the draft. In great part, the challenge is that many states are conflicted over the application and interpretation, as I see today, of key aspects of international law in the cyber context as we observe today. But the tension is, I say, to be encouraged. We need to exploit that tension. After all, although international law can serve as a normative firewall against hostile cyber operations, the principle of sovereign equality must be understood as protective norms and also can act as barriers to a state's own cyber operations, some of which may be deemed essential to the state, especially with respect to national security. These differences, Mr. Chairman, of normative perspectives often play out domestically in disagreements between ministries with different roles vis-a-vis cyberspace, and internationally between states wielding offensive cyber capability and those that see themselves as primarily as victims thereof. Paradoxically, the international community today plainly sees hostile cyber operations as a significant threat to their security and their citizens' welfare. But efforts to legally prohibit or restrict them have borne little fruit. We need to address this issue in all its earnestness. As much as ICT threats are becoming a rising global challenge, innovative research will no doubt develop understanding on the persistent threats in the ICT environment in the current context, and we need to step up our efforts. Sri Lanka wishes to highlight that the current discussions need to specifically look at the challenges in the industrial sector that needs more targeted delivery. In particular, during the last 2 decades, there have been vulnerabilities shown in critical infrastructure such as financial networks, power grids. These sectors have been prone to cyber attacks. Despite there have been initiatives undertaken through sectoral partnerships, still work remains to be done. Mr. Chair, as cyber threat landscape continues to grow and expand, developing countries in particular will require capacity building in the areas such as infrastructure, as quite rightly again focused in the draft, and technology to understand and face the challenges by again cybersecurity management capabilities in order to strengthen the resilience and preparedness. Sri Lanka identifies that capacity building in technical support training through cooperation programs can build more collaboration, innovative ideas in overcoming threats, in particular in internet governance and in international law. Sri Lanka, having recognized that equitable global digital transition requires to meet contemporary challenges inclusive of digital governance, we appreciate that developing countries such as Sri Lanka have to face issues such as cybercrime, cybersecurity, threats, disinformation, and violence, and that the digitalization must be environmentally friendly. We have also recognized the fact that the multilateral digital collaboration and connection are required if it is to effectively contribute to the green transition. We are also appreciative of the fact that the digital technology can be of assistance in dealing with climate change and disaster prevention, and that we cannot have a digital divide that would weaken the whole policy towards digital and resilience to confront criminality in cyberspace and an abuse of technology. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the Permanent Representative of Sri Lanka for his statement.